When Uncle Peter died, everything in my life changed in ways I was not prepared for. He was not just my uncle, he was my entire family, my guardian, my protector ever since that terrible night when my parents died in a car accident when I was 6 years old. From that moment on, he took me in, raised me as his own, and never once did he let me feel the absence of my parents. He never married, never had children of his own. It was always just the two of us against the world. He worked hard, made sure I went to good schools, taught me right from wrong, always providing, always steady. Growing up, I never questioned anything, not the absence of other relatives, not why he rarely spoke about his own past or our family. Whenever I asked, he would simply smile and say, "The past is the past, kiddo. We look forward, not backward." And I trusted him because that was all I had ever known. But sitting in Mr. Sanders' office for the reading of his will was the first time that trust began to tremble. Mr. Sanders was an older man with sharp eyes and a voice that carried both authority and discomfort. As he read through the document, my mind drifted, barely able to process the words as I struggled with the weight of grief. Everything was left to me: the house, the car, the savings, the cabin up north. Every single possession my uncle owned was now mine. But then Mr. Sanders cleared his throat and read a sentence that immediately snapped my attention back to him. With the exception of the safety deposit box at Westwood Bank, which is to remain sealed indefinitely as per Mr. Harlow's instructions. I blinked hard, confused, and suddenly uneasy. "What safety deposit box?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but hearing the crack in it anyway. Mr. Sanders shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "This arrangement was made separately years ago. Its contents are not part of the estate and therefore not included in your inheritance." I frowned, struggling to understand. "But I am his heir. I inherited everything else. Why not this?" My tone was sharper now, leaning closer as though sheer force could pry more information from him. Mr. Sanders gave a patient but firm shake of his head. "Your uncle made very specific legal arrangements regarding that box. I am not authorized to discuss its contents or provide access. Legally, my hands are tied." Frustration and suspicion twisted in my stomach as I left his office that day. Something was wrong. I could feel it pressing against my ribs like a weight that refused to lift. Why would Uncle Peter leave me everything except for one single locked box? What could possibly be inside that was so important or so dangerous that it needed to remain sealed forever? That night the house felt different, colder, unfamiliar, like it was holding its breath. I wandered through each room, every corner filled with silent memories. Eventually, I ended up in Uncle Peter's study, a place that always smelled faintly of old books and coffee. The shelves were lined with rows of carefully arranged ledgers and dusty novels. His desk was immaculate as always, but something tugged at me, guiding my hand to one particular row of books. I reached behind them and discovered a small, leather-bound notebook tucked out of sight. Its cover was cracked and worn as though it had been handled many times but never meant for anyone else's eyes. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were brief entries, fragmented thoughts scribbled in his familiar handwriting. "Moved everything important to the box today. Safer there. If anything happens, Sanders knows not to release the contents. She can never find out. It is better this way." My heart raced with every word, my mind spinning. Who was she? What was so important that he had locked it away even after his death? I flipped through the notebook searching for more, but the entries ended abruptly, offering no further answers, just empty pages that only deepened the mystery. I stared at those words long into the night, unable to shake the growing fear gnawing at my insides. By morning, I knew I could not let this go. I needed answers. I needed the truth. So I drove to Westwood Bank, determined to demand access. The building stood tall and imposing, with its glass walls reflecting the clouded sky above. Stepping inside, I approached the front desk with my ID in hand, explaining who I was and why I had come. The receptionist listened politely, then typed into her computer, her professional smile faltering slightly as she read the screen. "I am very sorry, Miss Harlow, but this safety deposit box is under a private restriction. Only authorized individuals may access it. I am his only living relative." I pressed, my voice sharp. "I inherited everything else." She shook her head softly. "I understand your frustration, but legally this arrangement was made independently of the estate and I cannot release the contents without proper legal authorization." The disappointment and frustration followed me out of the building and clung to me like a heavy cloak. Why had Uncle Peter done this? What was he trying to hide? Or worse, what was he trying to protect me from? That night, I sat alone in the dimly lit house as storm clouds gathered outside, the wind rattling the windows as though nature itself was warning me to leave well enough alone. But I couldn't. And that's when I remembered Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister. We hadn't spoken in years, not since the funeral. Uncle Peter had always distanced himself from her and most of the family, but if anyone knew something, it would be her. I found her number and dialed, my handies clammy, my chest tight. After a few rings, she answered, her voice warm but surprised. "Haley, my goodness, it has been so long." We exchanged brief pleasantries, but I quickly cut to the point. "Aunt Margaret, do you know anything about a safety deposit box Uncle Peter kept?" There was a long pause, the kind that makes your heart sink before the words even come. Why are you asking about that? She said carefully. Because I just found out about it and no one will tell me what's inside. I think it has something to do with my parents. Another pause. Your uncle was a good man, Haley, but he carried heavy guilt. That box holds things he never wanted you to know, things that could tear this family apart. What kind of things? I whispered, already feeling the ground shifting beneath me. Things better fit buried, she said quietly. I tried to push her for more, but she would not say anything else. Be careful, Haley. Some truths don't set you free. They break you. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of the study, surrounded by shadows and silent questions that refused to go away. My uncle, my parents, the sealed box, the strange notebook entries, the warnings, everything was connected, and I knew with a clarity that frightened me that no matter what it revealed, I was going to open that box. The more they warned me not to open that box, the more I knew I had to. It was no longer curiosity. It was an obsession growing inside me, pulling at my ribs every time I tried to distract myself. I could not eat, could not sleep, could not think about anything else. Every corner of this house now felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by secrets. Secrets that were buried deep, locked away for years, hidden behind legal walls that even death could not tear down. I sat night after night in Uncle Peter's study, staring at that worn leather notebook, reading the same fragmented entries again and again. Moved everything important to the box today, safer there. If anything happens, Sanders knows not to release the contents. She can never find out. It is better this way. Each word sliced deeper into my mind. Who was she? Why could I never find out? And what could possibly be so dangerous inside a single locked box that he chose to protect me by burying the truth completely? I tore through the house looking for anything else that might help me piece together this nightmare. Filing cabinets, locked drawers, old boxes hidden beneath the floorboards in the attic. Most of it was normal, tax records, receipts, property deeds, but then deep in the bottom drawer of his desk, behind layers of dusty files, I found a folder wrapped tightly in an old handkerchief, as if even paper itself needed to be shielded from the world. My hands shook as I unwrapped it. Inside were several yellowed newspaper clippings, their edges curled and brittle. The headlines made my stomach churn. Local man killed in violent home invasion. Widow and child survive robbery attempt, no suspects identified. I read every word as my heart pounded in my chest. My father Daniel had not died in a car accident like Uncle Peter told me. He had been murdered in our home. My mother and I survived by hiding in a closet while strangers tore through our house and took my father's life. The articles were filled with vague police statements, unconfirmed motives, and dead ends. My entire life had been built on a lie. I sat there staring at the clippings, trying to force my brain to remember something, anything. But my memories were like shattered glass, scattered flashes of flashing red and blue lights, of distant voices muffled by sobs, but nothing clear, nothing that made sense. I could not sit in silence anymore. I grabbed my phone and called Aunt Margaret, my voice shaking as she answered. This time I did not ask politely. I demanded the truth. I told her everything I had found, everything that had been hidden from me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before she spoke. Your uncle did what he thought was best for you, Haley. Your father was not the man you believed he was. I felt my breath catch. What do you mean? She sighed deeply. Your father was involved with dangerous people, involved in criminal activity, money laundering, fraud, debts that grew too large. He was in far deeper than anyone knew, and Peter tried to help him get out, but your father refused. He thought he could fix it on his own. He could not. The night those men came, it was not random. They came to collect. They came to settle what your father owed. My skin felt cold and hot all at once. But why lie to me? Why tell me it was a car accident? Margaret's voice trembled. Because your mother was terrified. After it happened, she was ready to cooperate with the police, but the threats did not stop. Those people made it clear they would come for both of you if anyone spoke out. That is when Peter stepped in. He moved you, he changed your name, he arranged new records and erased everything that connected you to Daniel's past. He cut off contact with anyone who might know who you were. He built a wall around your life to keep you safe. My mind spun with questions. And the box? What is in the box? More silence. Evidence, she whispered finally. Police reports, financial records, photographs, everything that tied your father to those people. Peter collected it all. He wanted to be prepared if anyone ever came back, but he also knew that opening that box could draw attention to you again. That is why he sealed it permanently. That is why he made Sanders swear never to release it. My throat was tight, my voice shaking as I whispered. Are those people still out there? Her voice was barely audible. I do not know, but some of them were powerful, and Peter never trusted that they were truly gone. The more time passed, the safer you were, but if that box is opened, Haley, old things might wake up. You are not in danger now. Let it stay buried. I ended the call and sat in the dark for hours, my heart racing. My father's death was not some tragic accident, it was an execution, and my entire life since then had been a carefully constructed lie to protect me from enemies I did not even know existed. But now I knew. And I also knew I could not walk away. Uncle Peter had spent years trying to protect me, but all he had done was postpone the truth. I needed to face it, even if it meant tearing open the one door he had desperately tried to keep shut. The next day, I called Ben. Ben was an old friend from college who now worked in private security. If anyone could help me get into that box, it was him. When I explained what I had found, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You understand what you are asking me to do, right?" he said slowly. "This is not just breaking into a safe. This could be very dangerous." "I know," I said, my voice steady. "But I need to know. I cannot keep living my life wrapped in someone else's fear." Ben finally sighed. "Meet me tonight. Bring everything you have." That evening, we met at a quiet diner far outside of town. I handed him the notebook, the newspaper clippings, and every piece of information I had gathered. He studied them carefully, his expression growing darker with every page he read. Finally, he looked up at me, his eyes serious. "Haley, this goes deeper than you think. If even half of this is true, your father was involved with very dangerous people. Opening that box could attract attention from people you do not want knowing you are still alive." "I know," I said quietly. "But I am done hiding." Ben nodded slowly. "Then let us open the box, once and for all." The night before we went to the bank, I could not sleep. The weight of everything I had discovered crushed me like a stone pressing against my chest. My father's double life, the danger my mother faced, the lies Uncle Peter built to protect me, all of it swirled inside my mind like a storm I could not outrun. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the headline again: "Local man killed in home invasion," playing like a broken record. My father's face blurred in my memories, but the emotion was sharp, like a knife twisting deeper. The next morning, I met Ben behind Westwood Bank. His expression was calm, but his eyes revealed how serious this had become. He wore plain clothes like me, nothing that would draw attention. As we approached the entrance, he leaned in slightly and whispered, "Remember, let me speak, follow my lead, we are not breaking any laws yet." Ben had arranged a private audit under legal pretense, exploiting a loophole that allowed temporary supervised access to the contents for verification of ownership after death. The bank manager, a nervous man with thin glasses, greeted us and led us to a secured room deep inside the vault. My heart raced as each lock disengaged with a heavy click, and the door opened to rows of gleaming metal boxes. The manager pulled out box number 1147 and placed it gently on the table, then stepped back to give us privacy. Ben carefully removed the contents and spread them out on the table. A thick bundle of documents tied with leather, several plastic-sealed photographs, and a small black metal lockbox sat before us. My breath quickened. This was it. We began with the documents. Ben untied the strap and unfolded the papers. My stomach turned as the truth spilled out before my eyes. Account ledgers tracking millions of dollars moved through countless shell companies, bank statements from offshore accounts in multiple countries, contracts signed by names I did not recognize, masked behind layers of fake identities. My father had not simply made a few bad decisions. He was a central player in a massive laundering operation tied to organized crime syndicates operating across state lines. Ben worked quickly, scanning each page with a portable device, capturing every piece of evidence for safekeeping. "If this ever went public," he said under his breath, "we need everything airtight and verifiable." Then we moved to the photographs. I could barely look at them without feeling sick. Grainy surveillance shots of my father standing with various men, their faces circled in red ink with names scribbled underneath. Some were local figures tied to fraud cases I vaguely recalled from news reports. Others were far more dangerous. One photo made Ben freeze. My father was pictured shaking hands with a tall man in a tailored gray suit, his hand resting firmly on my father's shoulder as though claiming him. The name written below chilled my blood. "Victor Delano." Ben's voice dropped. "This is bad, Haley. Victor Delano is not just another criminal. He runs one of the most protected organized crime families in the country. Federal investigations have tried to take him down for years without success. Seeing your father this close to him means he was not just laundering money. He was deeply embedded in the Delano family's operation." My head spun. My father was involved in a criminal empire larger than anything I had imagined. Finally, Ben turned his attention to the small locked case. He worked quickly with a set of tools, picking the mechanism open with ease. Inside were multiple USB drives and several unmarked DVDs, each labeled only with dates ranging from years before my father's death to months after. Ben inserted one of the drives into his secured laptop. The screen filled with file directories containing hours of video recordings, scanned contracts, wire transfers, phone call recordings, and encrypted folders that tied dozens of people to my father's dealings. This was not just evidence against my father, this was evidence that could take down an entire criminal network. Ben stared at the screen for a long moment before finally whispering, "Peter did not just protect you, Haley. He collected this to protect himself, to have leverage, insurance in case anyone ever came looking." I struggled to breathe, the enormity of the situation crashing down on me. Everything my uncle had done, every lie he told, every wall he built around my life, it was all to hide this. But I knew, standing there in that cold vault, that once we opened this box, once we copied these files, there was no going back. The The people involved would not let this stay buried if they ever found out. Ben closed the laptop, his voice steady but grave. We need to move quickly and quietly. This is no longer about curiosity. This is survival. The weight of what we had uncovered followed me like a shadow that refused to lift. No matter how far we tried to run from it for days, Ben worked tirelessly, copying every document, every file, every recording, making sure there were multiple backups hidden in secure encrypted drives spread across different locations. The more we copied, the more overwhelming it became. Names of politicians, business owners, judges, law enforcement agents, all tangled in a web of corruption tied to the Delano family, and my father's involvement at the very center of it. My head throbbed as I tried to absorb it all. The man I had grown up believing was a victim of tragedy was instead a man consumed by his own greed and alliances with people far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. Uncle Peter had not lied to protect my father's reputation. He had lied to protect me from the monsters my father willingly stood beside. Ben remained focused, his calm demeanor never wavering as he methodically cataloged each file, every image, every name. "These people do not play games, Haley," he said. "One mistake and you will not get a second chance once they realize someone has their evidence. They will not stop." I knew he was right, but the thought of walking away from it felt even worse. The truth was in my hands, and I could not pretend it did not exist after we secured the last of the files. Ben made a plan. We need to get this into the hands of federal authorities, but we cannot go through the local police. They are compromised. We cannot trust anyone connected to this town. Ben had a contact in the Justice Department, someone high enough and clean enough to take this seriously. If anyone could bring down the Delano family, it was them, but we needed to move fast and quiet before anyone caught wind of what we had found the next day. Ben arranged a meeting with his contact in a safe location outside the city while he drove. I sat silently staring out the window, my mind racing with fear and guilt. Uncle Peter had carried this secret for so long, sacrificing everything to keep me safe. And now here I was preparing to rip open the very wound he had worked so hard to seal. But deep down, I knew I was doing what he never could. It was time for the truth to finally come out when we arrived at the safe house, a small cabin deep in the woods, Ben's contact. A stern man named Agent Keller greeted us with a firm handshake. He listened intently as we laid everything out, showing him the files, the photos, the recordings. His face grew darker with each passing minute when we finished. He exhaled slowly. "This is even bigger than I thought," he said quietly. "This is enough to dismantle the entire Delano operation if we play it right, but you both need to understand what comes next once we move on. There is no protection for you. They will retaliate. We can put you into protective custody, but you will be giving up your entire life. Everything you know will be gone forever." The weight of his words sank into my chest like lead. I glanced at Ben. His expression was calm but serious. "This is your decision, Haley," he said softly. "If you say no, we destroy everything and walk away forever. But if you say yes, there is no going back." I closed my eyes for a long moment, picturing my mother, my father, Uncle Peter, and the years of lies that followed. I opened my eyes and whispered, "I want them to pay for what they did." Agent Keller nodded grimly. "Then we move forward tonight. You both stay here while we prepare the warrants. Stay off your phones. Do not contact anyone from your old life. We cannot risk any leaks the next few hours, dragged by every creak of the cabin. Every gust of wind outside felt like a threat lurking just beyond the trees as the sun set. The cabin grew colder, darker, more suffocating. My heart raced as I thought about what might come next. Then, just after midnight, Ben's phone vibrated, a secure message. Keller's team was in position. The operation was beginning within hours. Federal agents raided multiple properties tied to the Delano family. Dozens of arrests were made, files confiscated, accounts frozen, businesses shut down as dawn broke. News outlets exploded with headlines detailing the massive takedown of one of the largest criminal empires in the country. I watched in stunned silence as Victor Delano himself was led away in handcuffs on live television. His face stone cold, but his eyes burning with fury. My body trembled, both from relief and from terror, because I knew this was not over, not yet. In the days following the arrests, everything changed. The media swarmed the story, calling it one of the most significant criminal takedowns in decades. Headlines splashed across every network detailing the extent of the Delano family's empire and the staggering evidence uncovered that directly linked them to countless crimes. But behind the cameras and flashing lights, a darker storm was brewing. Ben and I were immediately placed under federal protection, moved to a safe house in a different state under new identities. The government offered us full witness protection, knowing that retaliation was almost certain. We lived each day under constant guard, unable to contact anyone from our past lives. I could no longer visit my childhood home or see the familiar streets I once called home. My entire existence was now confined to this isolated place where safety was measured in silence and distance from everyone I once knew. Though the operation had been successful, not everyone tied to the Delano family had been captured. Some had slipped through the cracks, vanishing before agents could reach them. These were the people we feared most, the ones who would not stop hunting until they silenced anyone who had betrayed them. Each night, I lay awake, listening to every creak in the house, every shadow outside the window, a reminder that danger still lurked out there. Ben stayed close, always calm, always vigilant. His presence was my only comfort in those long hours of fear. As weeks turned into months, the federal case against the Delano family moved swiftly thanks to the overwhelming evidence we had uncovered. Victor Delano himself faced dozens of charges ranging from racketeering to murder, conspiracy to money laundering. The courtroom was packed every day as witnesses testified, and the mountain of evidence was presented piece by piece. I watched from a secured room through a private live feed, unable to attend in person for my own safety. My stomach twisted every time I saw Victor's face staring coldly from his seat, never once breaking his expression as witness after witness described his crimes. The trial lasted for months, but eventually the jury reached its verdict. Guilty on all counts. Victor Delano was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The weight of that verdict lifted something heavy from my chest, but it did not erase the fear completely. Even with Victor locked away, there were still others. The government continued its search for the remaining fugitives, but every agent I spoke to warned me that we would never truly be safe. They would always look for us. My life as I knew it was gone forever, replaced by new names, new homes, and constant movement. Uncle Peter's sacrifice had kept me safe for years, and now his secret had finally been exposed, but at a cost neither of us could have fully predicted. Ben and I stayed together, finding comfort in each other as we navigated this new life. Over time, the fear dulled, replaced by a cautious peace. I built a quiet routine, far from everything I once knew, always careful, always watching. Some nights, I would sit alone, staring out at the dark sky, thinking about everything that had been lost, and the family that had once existed before greed and violence tore it apart. But deep down, I knew I had made the only choice I could. I had faced the truth, no matter how painful, and in doing so, I had finally broken free from the lies that had ruled my life. And even though the past would always haunt me, I refused to let it define me any longer.